Hello and welcome to Ave Explores Live, one of our awesome offerings that we have with our brand new Ave Explores the Bible series. You can find all of that content, by the way, over at AveMariaPress.com. Podcasts, these video conversations, social media exclusives, articles. So here's the thing. Ave Explores has been on a little bit of a break, as always. Lots of things went on a break during the summer, but now we're back. We've got 4 awesome series coming to you this year, as well as an awesome Advent and Lent mini-series that we'll be offering through our podcast and through our website. And we're kicking all of that off with this brand new series, Ave Explores the Bible. And I'll be totally honest with you. You might be sitting there thinking, okay, Ave Maria Press is doing something on the Bible too? Like, isn't everybody doing something on the Bible? The Bible's kind of the thing right now. And I say to that, yeah, we're doing something on the Bible too, because why not? Sacred Scripture is so valuable, it's so important, it's so necessary, it's so critical for us to dig into. This entire series will take that wide look, like we often do with our Ave Maria Press, Ave Explores topics. We've looked at Mary, we've looked at mental health, we've looked at faith and action and the saints and Catholic family life, and we're kicking off this year's Ave Explores series by trying to take our standard, signature, unique, deep dive look at why sacred Scripture is important, why it matters to you and to me in the everyday, how to read it, how to pray with it, how to make it a part of our integrated family life, and perhaps most importantly, and this is what I'm really excited about for this Ave Explorers series, why the Bible matters in the 21st century. And we're doing that with all of the content that we usually create: podcasts, Facebook Live conversations, all sorts of social media exclusives, really awesome articles, all from experts, from people who know the Bible from both an academic perspective, from a personal perspective, perhaps even from a perspective, an angle that you or I have not really considered before when coming and approaching sacred Scripture. And to kick off our first Facebook Live for this round of Ave Explorers, we're bringing onto the show a friend of mine, Katie Woltornist. She is an artist, she's an art teacher, and she's the developer, the creator, the creative mind behind, the real ministry leader of an incredible ministry called Behold Visio Divina, which takes passages from sacred Scripture and moments from church history and opportunities and chances for prayer, and pairs it with a sacred image and guides people through meditation of the image and the passage from sacred Scripture. And we figured, what would be better to kick off an entire series on sacred Scripture than look at a really unique way to pray with sacred Scripture through sacred art. So joining us on the show, we have Katie Woltornist of Behold Visio Divina. Thanks so much for joining us on Ave Explores Live.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you do, and then we'll dig into Behold Visio Divina and all that great stuff.
Yeah, so I'm originally from New Jersey. I currently live in Alexandria, Virginia area. I've been here about 3 years. During the day, I'm actually a full-time art teacher. So I teach elementary art at Aquinas Regional School in Woodbridge. So I teach for the Nashville Dominicans.
Awesome.
But I'm doing a ministry called Behold for 6 years now. So it started in 2016. It was the Fruit of the Given Institute Forum in 2016. And we teach people how to pray using sacred art and Scripture.
So where did that, I know a little bit about Given. Tell us what happened. I think my sister and you were in the same cohort. Is that how it works? Yeah. So I got a text message from her, full disclosure, in June when y'all reconnected at this year's Given Forum. And she said, hey, you need to know about her and what she's doing and use her in some way, either on your radio show or Ave Explorers. And it worked out perfectly because immediately I said, well, we'll use her for our Bible series. So tell us what happened in 2016 that sparked Behold, and then a little bit about what you guys actually do.
Sure. So yeah, it was a complete surprise to me. So I went Given 2016, just a little context of what they do is it's a women's forum where they gather Catholic women from across the country and now across the world. They have some this past Given who are from England, from Mexico, and they fly in for a week-long forum on just formation. So like the feminine genius, they do some talks. They also do like small groups. In our cohort, we actually had like small groups of about 5 to 7 women. And so your sister was actually in my small group out of 300 women, which was pretty unbelievable.
Small world.
But yeah, it's really crazy how God works. But what we ended up doing was I went to that week-long conference, and I actually, at the time I was mid-20s, had no idea where my life was going. I was teaching, and part of the requirement was just give back to the church in some way. So at the time it was a free conference. They would fly you out there, or, pay for transportation. You would go out there for the week-long conference. And a way that you would give back was to come up with an action plan. So a way to give back to the church in some way. And so at the time I was thinking about it, the application, I was doing it for a while. And the day the application was due, I was like, maybe I'll just do something on prayer and art, because my life was deeply impacted by praying with art. So I decided to do a 5-week program just on praying on Mary's feminine genius through art at a parish in New Jersey that winter. And by the 3rd week, the women were sharing like deep, profound encounters with the Lord that, it was just very clear to me. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I was very honest with the Lord. They were asking for a book, and I was like, oh, like, I'm a teacher. I can't publish anything. Like, I don't know how to do this. And the next day, for somebody from my given cohort basically did a Facebook post and was like, if anybody needs help starting a ministry or a business, like, I have 10 years of expertise and I'm happy to help. And I was like, oh, there's the Lord's answer to a prayer.
There we go.
So that's kind of how we started. And now we have 6 published books. We do small groups throughout the US in parishes. We do workshops. We just did a retreat on praying with art, and just helping women come to a deeper understanding of their dignity by praying with sacred scripture is basically our mission.
Yeah. I love this idea of, there's so many types of prayer that people know about, right? You can do the rosary, you can do a Divine Mercy Chaplet, you have sacred art in your home. I mean, I'm thinking of the image of the visitation we have right at our front door, which is just as much a reminder to me to be hospitable as it is hopefully to guests that they are welcome in our home. But tell us about that connection between the visual and the scriptural, the auditory, I guess, when you hear sacred scripture or what you read. I mean, how did it, you're an artist and an art teacher, so I'm assuming it was always kind of in your head that you could do these things, but how did you start to explain that to other people? Where did that really come from in your own prayer life?
Yeah. So I'll share a little bit about my story because that might help. And then it kind of ties together like how the 3 come together. So I discerned religious life when I was 20. So 20 to 21, I discerned with the Nashville Dominicans, who I now work with. So God's hilarious with that. But I had thought about being a sister from the time I was 10. Enter religious life, thought that would be what I would do the rest of my life. I'm now currently engaged. So the Lord obviously has different plans than what I thought. But when I entered, it was a few weeks in that it was very clear to me that I saw the beauty of the life and like how, just there were certain women in my group who were becoming most fully themselves living that life. Like they entered living the schedule of the life, and everything made them so free. And I actually was experiencing the opposite. And that was really scary for me. Like I had thought about it from the time I was a kid. Some of the women who were explaining to me, I'm feeling so free living this life, had maybe thought about discernment maybe a year before.
Oh, wow.
And this was an interior battle for me because, obviously I wasn't sharing this with the women I was discerning with, like, oh wait, I'm not as happy, or I feel like I'm actually becoming less myself living this life. And at the time, I actually was struggling a lot with anxiety in the comment. I had a hard time praying. And we had a Nashville sister who would teach us art history, and she gave us a Fra Angelico image. We each got like a little square of a Fra Angelico image. And every morning from 5:30 to 6, we would do morning meditation. And I just started with this image and scripture every day for like 9 months on end, just image of the Annunciation, reading Luke's passage of the Annunciation. And for me, it made my faith less abstract. Like I knew about my faith. I was raised Catholic. It was, yeah, like I could give you all the factual information.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I don't think I fully met Jesus until that. Like it was
Mm.
actually a personal encounter for me, a vehicle to really place myself in the scene, kind of to use like Ignatian prayer. So like, what would the scene have felt like to be
Yeah.
Mary? What would have sounded like? What would Gabriel's voice have sounded like? And for me, it really was this way of going to my heart in particular in this area of discernment, where I was afraid and experiencing anxiety and having a hard time praying, that Mary kind of gave me permission to say like, well, I was afraid too.
Mm.
Uh, and it really walked me through just being okay with who I was at that moment with the Lord and being very real with him. But yeah, I find that it uses all the senses, and you need to have scripture as that foundation. You
Yeah.
really do, as you're really seeing from the lens of an artist, which is beautiful. Like there's so many different ways that artists portray the Annunciation or the Visitation, that it might speak to you in particular through art, but then having scripture kind of supports what the image is about, and taking that to prayer.
Yeah.
So
It adds like another layer. I mean, that you mentioned Ignatian prayer, that imaginative prayer that so many people have been referencing The Chosen as like a vehicle that's helped them with imaginative prayer lately. And it's bringing scripture to life in a new way. Well, The Chosen's great, but we have all of this sacred art in the history of the church that can help us do that as well without live streaming something. Like I can bring a printed image with me to church, or I can get a book, the ones that you create, and help that, bring that with me into the adoration chapel. So tell us, lots of people know Lectio Divina, which is the reading, the meditation, the contemplation, the specific petition prayer. Visio Divina, does it have a similar structure where you kind of go through the 4 movements? Tell us what Visio Divina is in a practical way and how somebody could start doing it.
Yeah. So it's very similar to Lectio. I like to explain to people that if you think of Stations of the Cross or stained glass windows, people are already doing Visio.
Yeah.
It's been in the history of the church. Like we kind of, what we do is put it forth in a book format or in a format in particular for the women we serve. But people have done it, pretty consistently during Lent, when they do Stations of the Cross, or when they go into a church and they just sit with a work of art. But we go through similar movements. So it's Visio is the first one. So it's basically the same 4 movements of Lectio Divina, but you start with Visio first. So you start with the image, be aware of what's striking you. When we do our small groups, we actually leave margins around the image for people to take notes, just to say, I really was struck by Mary's facial expression. And we find that especially the Visio is very personal, just like Lectio is. I mean, everybody can be reading the same passage and get different things. Visio Divina, I think, especially for visual people, that's what I found for myself, is it was a way to really make things appeal to all the senses. Visio Divina was a great way. Yeah, you start with the Visio, and just being aware of what's striking you can really bring up a lot of personal stuff. So you're like, I relate to Mary's facial expression because I'm actually feeling that right now. Or sometimes you'll focus on another person that somebody else doing the same Visio won't notice. So usually I have them sit with that for a few minutes. Then we read the scripture passage. So we do the actual Lectio Divina portion. So be aware of what words or phrases are striking you. And then what we do is we give reflection questions. So at that point, they're doing deeper meditation. So the questions are very, very personal. They're kind of formatted to a specific theme, usually for our groups. So for our groups, we started out on the theme of the feminine genius. So the 4 gifts, the main 4 gifts that John Paul II outlines of being a woman. And we format the questions to that.
Okay.
And some of them are just, deeply personal of like, Mary was afraid at the Annunciation. How are you afraid? Like, is there something you're afraid of personally right now? And how can you ask for Mary's help? So it's really bringing those questions in your heart to the forefront to bring to prayer. Then we have the prayer portion. So just resting in God's presence and contemplation. And then we close up our small groups in their time of prayer. And then usually when we leave Visio Divina groups, we have about 30 to 45 minutes of small group discussion after. So we leave them together and then we lead them through small group discussion.
Well, I imagine that's really valuable. The same way that sacred scripture it builds up all these different ideas in your head, an image paired with a passage from sacred scripture brings it to a different level to where you do kind of sometimes bubble up. Like you want to share with somebody, this is what her face looked like to me, or this moment where Jesus is reaching out and grabbing Peter out of the water. I always have thought about Jesus pulling Peter out of the water, but I've never imagined how strong that water probably was, or that look of fear. This is going to sound cheesy, but I used to use this image of Lego Jesus and the apostles in a talk with young people. And I kind of pseudo did Visio Divina with them with this Lego image, because the apostles in the background look horrified that Peter is drowning. And it was always a good little punchline. But now that you talk about it, there are different things that jump out to you at different times. So I'm curious, when it comes to how you pick the art and how you pick the passages to pair with it, what does your process look like? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of prayer that goes into the planning of what to pair with what and what themes to dig into. How does scripture really drive you doing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think, because it's kind of morphed through this vocation for me, for sure, because this is definitely a vocation for me. And like in the beginning, it was like my personal prayer. So we did the mysteries of the rosary and I was praying through those mysteries myself. So there was a season where I was really struggling with just like going through sorrow with the Lord. And that was the Sorrowful Mysteries book. So it was images that touched my heart. And then usually we would test out a book before we would publish it. So it was kind of getting a wide array of women. So we had women from anywhere from 18 to, we had somebody in our small group who was 90 years old.
Wow.
And some were mothers, some were single women, grandmothers. And so trying to reach that wide audience of what it means to be a Catholic woman of today, not, just this specific box of woman. And for that, usually when I'm praying with an image, it's for, my own personal prayer, I start with that, but then it's saying, okay, what are the needs of the women that we're serving? So there are some images that will really resonate with women of today, that they might really like this image, or here's this image from the, medieval times that really is so beautiful that anybody would just love to sit with. As we've developed, so especially this past year, maybe the past 2 years, after we finished the mysteries of the rosary, we've had specific themes to pray through apart from that. So we did a series on praying as a family in the year of St. Joseph. So we did themes of just St. Joseph, Mary, and Jesus. And so the audience is different for that. It was like, okay, what images will appeal to men and women and family, children? Like, if you have a child who's 4, that they'll be able to keep attention span. And then recently we've been doing a post-abortion companion. So it's like, okay, what is, a lot of these women feel, they're dealing with a lot of hurt and a lot of shame. And like, what are images that will bring down walls for these women to feel the Lord's compassion? So I like to look at who the audience is first. I kind of research a bunch of images, have like my internet full of a ton of tabs, and then kind of throw it down, pray with some, and then I'll kind of test out with a few women, what are pros and cons to this image? Did you find it hard to or easy? And that way we can kind of form fit it to it being the best experience for the people that we serve.
Yeah. So that's, there's this finding of the image. Is there a process of, say in the post-abortion companion, to find the passages that you link to it? Are there specific stories that have always kind of stuck out to you? You're like, I've got to get I've got to get Mary and the woman caught in adultery. That's got to be in some book at some point. I guess my question is, are there certain passages that you love to pair with an image, or certain images that you just know, okay, this is the perfect passage for it, even though it might not be like a story type image or excuse me, a story type phrase?
So we, in particular, I love Henry O. Tanner's Annunciation. So that's like a general go-to for me. That image really seems to resonate with anybody. And what I started doing in the beginning was just picking the Bible passage that lined up with that image. And then as I started doing theological study, and then even just people that God has put in my life to kind of help me with my scriptural backing, we've really tied Old and New Testament together, and it's this beautiful complement. So that happened with the Sorrowful Mysteries. Was originally I was just putting, the passages in scripture, just going through the Sorrowful Mysteries. And then I forget what it was, but just praying. I had like a week-long retreat where I was writing this companion, and all of a sudden I was flashing back to Isaiah when, just the prefigurations of Jesus being the suffering servant. And I was like, oh, whoa, that needs to go in there. Definitely. And it really complement the Old and New Testament complement each other so well, because also at different stages in your life, you might resonate more with just the beautiful poetry of the Old Testament. So having the two kind of bracket each other is really beautiful. Some of the images we use, we'll start with, the scripture passage about that, but then even doing, like, I did the Song of Songs for a recent retreat that we did. And it was just adapting it. Like, these women wanted to know that they were beloved by the Lord. So it's like, song perfect for this. So yeah, for me, usually how it starts is I have a list of images that I go through and kind of narrow it down. And same with scripture. It's like, what are all the possible scripture passages that can go with this? And then what's the main theme that we're praying through? And we'll kind of narrow it down of like, oh, this one might work and this one might work. And these would come each other. So a lot of it's prayer for me.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. I, as you were talking, I was remembering that you're a teacher with young kids. Do you do Visio Divina you're in a Catholic school, so I'm assuming it's maybe part of your curriculum. And I guess my next question, I'm thinking of my 4-year-old who sometimes when she's upset or when she's frustrated about something, we have a notebook and we hand it to her with some crayons and we say, color your feelings. And that usually is a great outlet for her. And so, and then I always put a little date in the corner of like, okay, this is how she felt on this date at this time. And when she gets married someday or she enters a convent, I'll be able to hand it to her and say, look, I wasn't a terrible mom. Like, sometimes we had you color your feelings. How does Visio Divina end up working with kids? Or is there ever an opportunity where art and scripture really pair together in their little heads?
Yeah, this has been a whole new world for me this year because I was taught high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Was what I studied theology. I was like, oh, high school is definitely what I want because they can go through these like intricate thought processes of like trying to figure out if the faith is true or not, and they through that wrestling by, through study and through understanding. And I just started teaching at Aquinas this past year. So it was the first time teaching kindergartners and being like, pull out your scissors, and realizing half of them don't even know how to use scissors. That was like, true. I was like, felt so lost that class because I was like, pull out your scissors. And some of them were like holding it like this and then holding their hand out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to explain how to use scissors. But so Visio Divina, I was used to doing, with the women in our groups, and then high schoolers who were just very, very verbal about like what they were noticing and very receptive. But I actually have loved doing it with my kids at school. So the St. Joseph companion that we did was primarily from that, and noticing kids, especially younger kids, have this amazing capacity. Like, they don't have fear of what other people think about what they share. So they are just very vocal of like, I just really like this. And it was, and it might be something that just immediately strikes them and they didn't fully think that process out of why, but you can kind of ask. So when I do it with my kids, I'll be like, what do you notice about this image? Like, we'll sit with it for a minute or two and I'll say, what strikes you about this image? What's special about this image? And they'll be like, I love this person's face. I'll be like, why do you like it? So it's asking the follow-up questions.
Yeah.
But I think children have the awe that we all should about art. I mean, seeing them for the first time looking at an image, it's like, why don't I have this half the time?
Yeah.
Just the immense capacity that this artist had to portray something that was 2,000 years ago is absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying that. I'm thinking of the moment we walked into the cathedral here in Lake Charles. They redid it recently. I say redid, they renovated different parts. And so we have a new image of Our Lady in the half dome at the front. And the first time Rose saw it, she said, "Oh, that's strong, Mary." And so now I can't, like, there's one image in my life that's just strong Mary, Our Lady of the Strong. Like, she just looks, and if you look at her, it's like, yeah, her arms do look a little more muscular than I guess we normally portray Mary. And she's surrounded by angels who are attending to her. And, but I loved Rose's immediate, oh, well, that's just who she is. Like, that's, in the same way that I always think of the Jesus image in the Immaculate Conception Basilica as
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, right. It's like we got strong Mary, we have angry Jesus. Like, there's simple ways to put it. And then there's always something in the Bible that we can find to kind of back us up or to give us a deeper way to pray with it. Can you show us one of your resources, just like what it looks like, so that folks can go grab a copy and really do this on their own?
Yeah. So this is an example. This was the first book that we did, and it was the Joyful Mystery of the Rosary. And we include 5 lessons in it. So we walk them through in the beginning, the steps of Visio Divina.
Okay.
And then they start with an image.
Beautiful.
And then
Okay. Yeah.
And then we have the questions for reflection.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Questions. Usually we leave like margins and space for them to journal.
Yeah.
And then we have questions as well.
Oh, wow.
So, and then they come with personal closing prayers. So, it kind of tries to get the women to sit with that theme that we're trying to focus on for them. So with the Annunciation in particular, it's like focusing on God becoming man in the midst of fear. Like the most profound moment in human history was when a woman was experiencing, like, Mary was afraid and yet she gave her yes.
Yeah.
And praying with that. And so the closing prayer for that lesson is on that theme, but applying it to our own lives. Like, in this area of fear in my life, I give it to the Lord. So it's usually 5 lessons. And then usually we have a complement in the back with some document of the church on that theme. Nice. When we did the Luminous Mysteries, we did John Paul's document on the Luminous Mysteries of the Rosary, like when he announced the Luminous Mysteries of the Rosary. So we like to just have that backing of the tradition of the church, which is so beautiful, to kind of complement, okay, here's your personal prayer and here's scripture. And then here's the backing of the church of how you can understand these themes more, or where you can get more understanding of what this mystery is about.
Yeah. I love that there's so much depth and some richness. The fact that we can marry all those things together and an image and sacred scripture, a document of the church, it just kind of shows that the church has these pillars that we can hold on to. Where can we follow you, grab these, learn more about Visio Divina and this awesome work that you're doing? Thank you.
Yeah. So our website is beholdvisiodivina.com. And we also have a blog on there. So we usually do image reflections where somebody just writes like a basic blog post of walking through praying with art. On Facebook, you could just look up Behold Visio Divina, and same with Instagram. We like to keep up on our Instagram, just some image reflection. So it's helping the people that we serve. They buy a book, and either they could do it personally or they could do it in small groups, but it's trying to foster that community around it, that you have other people doing this with you. And hopefully in the coming weeks, we'll actually be doing some virtual, like, monthly Visio Divinas for anybody, like, being able to follow up and do it with other people together. So that's something we're hoping to have on our social media in the coming.
That sounds great. Well, we'll share all those links with everybody after the live is done. We'll post it on IGTV as well. Katie, thank you so much for sharing with us about your awesome ministry.
Thank you.
Like Katie mentioned, you can follow her on social media, Behold Visio Divina, and check out their website, beholdvisiodivina.com. Really some amazing stuff on there. You can grab copies of all the different books that they've created and published to help guide you through praying with sacred art and sacred scripture. We also want to make you aware of all of the awesome stuff that we've created for this Ave Explorers series. It's all over at AveMariaPress.com. That's your one-stop shop for Ave Explorers. You can grab a copy of Ave Maria Press's Ave Catholic Note-Taking Bible, and you can use the code AEXBible to get 20% off as well as free shipping. So you can use that code, grab a brand new Bible to use to pray and to take notes in the margins and to dig into what Scripture means to you in this particular moment. You know, I always want to make it perfectly clear that with Ave Explorers, what we're trying to do is not be the one-stop shop for all things on a topic. That'd be impossible to do in 4 weeks. What we want to do is give you a snapshot and dive into particular elements of a topic to pique your curiosity, to drive your interest, to help you understand something better so that then you can be a better Catholic in your day-to-day life. And so with Ave Explorers the Bible, we have brought in experts. We have brought in people who have read sacred scripture every day of their life. We have brought in folks who can explain to you why the Old Testament is confusing and why the book of Revelation is actually about Mass. Why praying with the Bible day in and day out is supposed to be a thing that we all make part of our daily prayer experiences, and not just for the already holy, but for you and for me. And if you go to AveMariaPress.com, you'll find everything that we're creating for this series. I really think you'd enjoy it. I think you'd especially enjoy our podcast, which you can find on any of your podcast apps, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's all right there on your phone. We'd love it if you'd give us a rating and a review once you listen to those episodes. We think you'd really enjoy it. We've got brand new episodes coming up every week of this series, as well as lots more that's there from all of our other series. So look for Ave Explorers in any of your podcasts app, download it, listen to it, love it, share it, maybe rate it and review it. We'd appreciate that. Maybe share this video as well, which you'll be able to find on Facebook, of course, as well as shared on IGTV. You can share it with your friends, and hopefully they'll enjoy this conversation about Visio Divina that we've had. Ultimately, we just hope that you become more of a Bible reader, maybe praying with sacred scripture in this new way with sacred images and sacred art, so that the stories of sacred scripture really jump off the page. So go to AveMariaPress.com, find all of the stuff that we're creating for Ave Explorers, and we will be back next week with Dr. John Bergsma, a scripture scholar and professor at Franciscan University of Steubenville, to talk to us about how he teaches sacred scripture to students who want to learn, and how you and I can learn it as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.